How do you define community for yourselves, for your companies?
One way I like to describe community is by looking at the difference between community and audience. And usually an audience is reliant on the one central focal point that distributes content, and it dies when this focal point goes away. The difference for community is that you actually have an audience within community, but you don't just have listeners, you also have contributors. And that's what makes it so much more powerful. Everyone contributes to in one way or another, and for that reason, there's usually a much stronger sense of belonging in a community than in an audience.
From a communal perspective, we serve a lot of different roles. Our job as a company is to be organized around relationships. Rather than having a general manager, we have community managers in store. We have people that come in and work every day. We have people that come in and use it as a co-working space. They come in for our restaurant every day. They come in for retail experiences. So we serve all sorts of different purposes, but it's all mostly organized around this general concept of creating a communal space more than anything else.
Why is community relevant, if not critical, to business generally today?
Airbnb, WeWork, Facebook, Twitter, Zynga, you name it. Community, they would not in many cases you could equal them as a community. So that's it on a macro level. On a micro level, we're seeing changes with the individuals and as consumers, especially with younger generations that are becoming a lot more transient, but on the other end have this strong sense for belonging. So the companies that recently have been doing particularly well are usually the ones that bridge that gap with community.
If you're building a company these days, particularly if it's digitally native, you have to be, at the core of your business, really good storytellers. At the end of the day, if you aren't able to articulate a compelling narrative, you're not going to be able to get people to really particularly care about what you're doing. And I think the natural extension of that is if you are telling a compelling story, you'll be able to foster that sense of community and help shape that. And I think that's more important than ever.
How do you all think about kind of bridging these worlds so that these communities are meaningful both online and offline?
Oftentimes what makes the difference is like, who are the people that are connecting and what are they connecting about? Because Coachella, for example, is also an offline community, but the behavior would be very different in this room if this was Coachella. Making sure that when you have a community that the container makes sense for what the community is.
The goal is to get you into the store. You have this really remarkable experience going to events and otherwise. And the digital element is this sort of pervasive thing that ends up sort of happening sort of accidentally and very subtly, and as a result of you coming into that room, and exists and follows you and allows for you to interact with other people there. It allows you to self-organize and come in for events.
How are you tailoring each store to be relevant to the local community? And Geisha, how do you tailor this global online community to women around the world?
So you look at the immediate context of where we're open, there's a huge amount of young families there. The development is called Legacy West, $3.5 billion brand new development, but it has literally no brands there whatsoever selling any products for kids. Big opportunity for us is to have products for kids, pretty low-hanging and very obvious opportunities. And so I think for us it's finding the balance there and making sure that it's very thoughtful and particular to that area.
So one part is making sure they know why they're part of the community, why they belong, and what they have in common. The second part is we have this tagline called Better Together, which achieves a certain behavior, which has people automatically give much more than they take. And the third part is that we allow people to trust each other. And we have this fascinating phenomena where no matter who we group together, no matter how different their backgrounds are, after the fact, they'll always say, oh, I had so much in common with everyone in my group, because people really connect over being open and sharing struggles. That's kind of really the glue that brings everyone together by having that infrastructure that amplifies them being together as a community.
At the end of the day, these are businesses, right? So how do you think about monetizing community as really core to both of your respective companies?
So we opted for a membership model. And the great part about that, as you know, as investors, is it's recurring revenue. So we have more or less an infinite runway that's growing. We also work on a partnership model. Just because we have an audience that is monetized, by definition, it's a valuable audience. It is a desirable demographic. It's a highly engaged audience. And then brands automatically want to associate with us. And the tricky part about community, which is a blessing and a curse, is it's not about creating value, but it's about creating the most value. So good, obviously, is the enemy of great. How can we monetize in a way that scales the most long term?
Fundamental recognition that drives a lot of our business, which is that direct-to-consumer, digitally native brands have a fundamental problem that customer acquisition costs are rising significantly and lifetime customer value is dropping significantly over time. And so what we are effectively to brands is either a marketing channel where they are trusting in us to bring together the right group of people. And in some cases, we are a real estate company where we are providing access to really strong areas full of these sorts of people where they'll want to come along and sort of see these brands. The model for us is for brands to pay to be there. We take a percentage of some of those sales in some instances. And it's almost seen as a marketing expense. And the trust they're placing in us is that the people we're able to attract through our focus on community, on storytelling, on events, on food, is going to generate a really robust pipeline of people that are going to help them build even more successful businesses and be able to acquire customers on an unprecedentedly inexpensive basis.
Community is also really important, obviously, on a personal level. And there's so many studies that show that we're happiest when we actually have a small, tight-knit community. And obviously, if we're happier, we're also going to do better at business. So that's what I'll leave you with. So try to build meaningful communities and try to really take a stock of like how other people make you feel. And especially if you're starting something from scratch, a lot of people might make you feel not so great. So pick your people carefully.
Yeah, I mean, I think the recognition for us is that people don't necessarily care about brands, they care about people. And so in as much as we are storytellers and in as much as we're trying to bridge that divide between consumer and the people behind those brands, I think that's a very remarkable and very important thing to bear in mind in all sorts of different sort of markets and different concepts, is that ultimately you're dealing with people and ultimately you just want to leave them with a really positive experience. And so it's not anything particularly profound, but it's just been incredibly important for us.
Great. Thank you so much to both of you. Thank you, everyone.